Okay, so this is the Inservice for the Medtronic Duet external ventricular drain. And the box is going to look like this for your packaging. And when you open this up, just so you can see what this looks like, it's all going to be into this package. And all you're going to more or less do is just peel this paper back and everything's going to be self-contained in here. Okay? So then when it comes out of the package, you basically have, this is a disposable single patient use system. And you're going to have the actual measuring scale, the measuring device with the graduated cylinder, a drainage bag, and then a tubing with a series of stopcocks and injection sites. Okay? So when it comes out of the package, we're going to have to assemble the device. And as you can see here, the main system stopcock is the main part that we're going to assemble. And there's actually a little two clamps and a little prong in the middle. And it's going to go into, depending what kind of drain you're doing. So if most of the times we're going to be doing a ventricular drain here, you're going to put it into the ventricular spot. If by chance they were doing a lumbar drain, it would go up to the lumbar spot. But with that tab and the slots, it can only go in one direction. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp that into the ventricular site. So that when this is set up for the patient, and we have this set up for ventricular on the scale, the 0 is lined up with the main system stopcock, which is lined up with where the patient's insertion is, or the trach is for the patient. One of the important notes about the scale on this device is that you have 4 different options. You have ventricular and you have lumbar. Remember, we had the lumbar part up here if you were measuring lumbar, now we're doing ventricular. So you want to make sure that you have it on the ventricular side. Okay, and it's labeled in black and white, and this is in millimeters of mercury, which is the reading that you would use here at the hospital. There is another option of using centimeters of water. So other hospitals may use that reading, and that gives you the flexibility to do so. And then your other options are lumbar, millimeters of mercury, and centimeters of water. So for this instance, you want to make sure that you are in the white scale with black numbers, the ventricular, millimeters of water. And what that'll again do is set you at 0, so that when I turn this knob and lower this to 0, it's lined up with the main system stopcock, and it gives you the millimeters of mercury reading on the scale. So once we're connected to the actual system, we're going to go ahead and attach it to the IV pole. And it's just a simple twist on scale, twist onto the pole back here. And for safety reasons, we're going to make sure that we have the tie on the IV pole, and you can adjust this to make it more taut. But once we get this level to the patient, wherever the patient is, the bed, that's where we're going to keep it that level. Once everything's assembled, we're then going to go into the priming aspect of the system. So when we're using an external ventricular drain, essentially what we're doing is moving fluid from one place to another. So in this case, the patient to the device. And we're two things to be considered with are over drainage and under drainage. And in order to accomplish that, if you think about it from a siphoning perspective, if you ever siphon gasoline or siphon a swimming pool, whatever it may be, you create a suction through a hose, and then you are lowering the hose below where the water fluid is, and that causes it to flow to another part, assuming that the pressure is equal. If you push more pressure on the one side, it can also push the fluid through the tubing as well. So all we're trying to do with this scenario is trying to get it to the level and to where the patient is, depending on the pressure level of the patient. So the first thing we need to do is prime the system. And it's essentially a series of stopcocks that will allow you to do so. So the way the stopcock works is wherever the direction of off is pointed, that's the part that's not going to get the fluid. So, and then there's 3 tabs other than the off, and that's where fluid can go. So this part will be connected to the patient's catheter at some point, but the first thing we need to do is prime all aspects of the line. It's also green tubing, so you can differentiate from neuro from any other tubing that you may have on the patient as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a syringe. You're going to use preservative-free saline. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. Sterile preservative-free saline in order to prime it. And all we're going to try to do is get the fluid through this part first. So I have it off to the system. It's open to the patient line. It is not connected to the patient line. So we're going to prime until we get all the fluid, and we see fluid and there's no bubbles coming out here.
And you would be sterile.
This is a sterile technique, correct. Okay? So then we have the patient part primed. Now I'm going to open it to the system and close it off to the patient. So we're off to the patient and we are open to the system. And then what I'm going to do here is actually, we would also connect a transducer at this time. Why don't we go ahead and connect the transducer? The transducer is going to connect right here where this red cover is. So we're going to take off the cover for the transducer part. And then the transducer, go ahead, you're going to disassemble.
You'll only need the transducer. So you will not need any other pressure tubing, only the transducer, which is also only going to fit in here one way. And then you're going to put dead enders.
Yep, so before you put that on, let's prime that. So open to the patient side, and we're going to prime that.
And part of the trick is staying sterile. So this does need to be done.
Give your little cap. That doesn't matter. So now we're open to the system. Off to the transducer. We're going to prime this until you get all the air bubbles out. And then you're going to turn it off to the system. Open to the transducer. Take that cap off. So that is primed. Clap that off. And everything is primed.
One more. Good. Okay.
There's no air in the lines, so you're ready to go.
Okay.
The device is now ready to connect to the patient.
Yeah, once we have everything connected to the patient and we have the system set down at 0, we're going to main system stopcock. We're going to turn it off to the system. We're going to connect the transducer. And at that time, you will push the 0 button. So there's a button you push on the clamp here, and it clamps onto the back of the main system stopcock until it clamps on. There's a bubble that shows level, and there's a button on the bottom that you push. And you aim this at the patient's tragus when it's level, and that indicates where level is for 0. When you want to remove, you just push the button underneath and releases the lasers. So we're going to just put this at the level. It's this little piece in the back of the main system stopcock into the patient's tragus where it's level, and that tells us when we can raise or lower this to get the level part.